So we're going to be going over our Agility Designer, and this is the icon that you normally see on your desktop. If it's not there, you want to find it and create a shortcut. And we're going to go over a couple of the components, the grid and the calendar, and we'll probably talk about the process grids a little bit, which are really the grids with some additional functionality. And then we're going to go over the tools that we use to build and modify and deploy these grids or calendars. So with that in place, we're just going to start going through the process here. So typically, you're going to open up a project. So when you go in here, you're going to see all the possible projects, and you're going to see the agility projects. You're going to create your own project for your company, or if you're going to have a lot of different functionality that you're going to create, you may want to create a project maybe for accounting, a project for customer service, for purchasing, for whatever, just a way to organize things more. So instead of having a list of many different grids, you can maybe break it down a little bit and maybe keep it more organized. So to start out, when you open up a project, you'll actually select new component, and then which of our design tool components do you want to use? And obviously, we're just going to create a grid. You're going to want to name it. And then what I like to do is put a note on here of maybe under construction or something like that, just so I have a record of it. Anybody else who comes in here can see it. And, instead of knowing whether it's live or not or what have you. So the first thing we want to do is create the SQL query. So one of the easiest ways is if you know your table, is just put in some basic SQL snippet here of selecting all the fields in the sales order. Now, this preview comes up, and you can use this to start identifying which fields do you want to show up on this grid. And it's as simple as this. Any of the fields that are here and any user-defined fields would also show up in here. So you could select the fields that you want. As soon as you say apply, and in this case, okay, I have my grid. So I said sales order demo 2. I can actually go look at my grid. I mean, this is a real simplistic version of it, but this could be how easy it is. I also have, you can also create children grids or detail grids, and I have a grid called sales order lines that I have a SQL statement that I'm taking a look at all the order lines. I have this administration table in here that I don't necessarily need, but I can create another grid here. So we'll be attaching multiple grids together. So if I go back into edit, I can select detail link, and then it'll ask me, what do I want to link? Well, it's going to give me a list of all my other grids that I have, and I have that grid that I just showed you. It's going to ask me what columns do you want to link it with, and in this case, I need to link it with the order doc entry to the line doc entry. And then I can have just a description of what it is. So if I go and do an apply, and I open up this grid I just looked at and I just created, I now have a child grid down here. And that grid moves with the row that's highlighted. Now what I want to do is switch to this version of the grid that I have some more functionality in. Sort of like a cooking show where they put something in the oven and they take it out instantly. That's what we're going to. That's what we're going to here. So this grid is real similar. I'm using the order header. I then, in my select statement, just did a SQL join of the business partner master. So here I'm just showing I can link some multiple tables together. I can start linking, sales, salesman master, address files, customer groups, whatever. I'm keeping this simple right here. Now, if you notice in my SQL statement, I have a case statement. So instead of just showing a character code for the doc status, I have a case statement that I'm using putting in more of a human readable status called sales order status. I also have some other fields I created with a case statement called sales order late. So if it's doc status open and it's past due, it sets this SO late to a 1. If the doc or the sales order is open and it's not confirmed, I set this approved field to a number 1. And what this allows me to do is create alerts. So now through this alert function, here's that SO late field. I have it set as, you have different operations. I have it set if it's equal to a 1, because that was my case statement. I get to pick a color. And then what field on the grid do you want that color to be applied to? And the same thing with approved. If it's a 1, it's not approved. I chose a little bit different color, a bright red, for the order number. So now if I look at that grid, I could see those colors start showing up. So now if you noticed, I just did it for the ordered orders. I didn't do it for the orders that were flagged as complete. And then the same thing with the approvals. One of the things I wanted to mention is obviously my query just shows order status or doc status open. It's everything. And whenever you create queries in SQL, really anytime, you want to be mindful of the performance. So obviously in here I could say just show me all the open orders, and that's fine. But if I have a pool of many orders over many years, this query is going to take more resources up, right? This isn't just agility, this is just SQL in general. So it's nice that I can look at orders here, but in my opinion, when you create grids for certain functions, create them for that function. So maybe I just want to have a grid for open orders, that's fine. If I wanted to have another grid to do some more analytics or some analysis, then maybe have a separate grid that looks at all the order types, all the order doc statuses. So when you're going to go run that, it may take a little longer and take more resources. But if you have a lot of people using this grid and it's primarily for open orders, I would just keep that in mind. Obviously, some of the other things we can do with our grids once they're created by user is I can go through and I could start hiding columns that don't mean anything, like this doc status, because I already have it in a readable format. I could hide my late fields that I used to create those alerts. I can move columns around. I could change the text of a column. Through the display function, I could say that this column is numeric. I have the ability to do some things with a group by panel. So like right here, I could do a total off of here. And then you can create versions of this layout. So I may want to say customer service, whatever my layout is. So now it sticks. So I could have many different versions of this. And we can also do other things of grouping, quickly grouping documents by whatever is showing up here. So the point is these layouts all could be manipulated and saved, as needed. We have the ability to put buttons and links really all over. They could be on the rows, they could be in the top area, in the ribbon bar, they could be in a bottom bar. I'm just going to keep it simple and show you these hyperlinks. So I have a hyperlink set up for the order number. And once you set this up, so I can go ahead and maybe we'll create another button and we'll call it for the card code. And then I have to do two things. I have to say that this is for a transaction. Then I need to define this transaction. And what I want it to do is focus on the current record. I'm going to go ahead and add a transaction, and then this opens up all the different objects that we have. Well, to do a hyperlink, we usually use this B1 launch form. So now I have 3 fields that I have to fill out. This first one is what SAP form ID is it? And I can send this to you if you don't have it. But if I wanted to look at business partner, that has an object type of 2. So I'd say I want to default this to object type 2. I'm sorry, form ID is going to go after the card code. The object type is going to go after 2. And then I do my return value in case there's an error here. So if I look at one that already existed, transaction, go into here, current record. I can see my B1 launch form. I can see I'm tied to document number 17, which is a sales order. I'm sending it the doc entry and my return error. So we can see that these are highlighted in blue. And then when I select this, that's going to open up an SAP window, assuming I have SAP called up. So these grids could be run outside of SAP. In order for the hyperlink to work, it would work through, for the hyperlink to work, you have to have SAP called up on your desktop somewhere. I can also move this grid around. So I can move this grid to another monitor if I want and have that up and running to do various things while I'm still working on Business One. To show you a little bit about filters. So a filter allows somebody to get prompts when they go to run the grid. You can also put these filters out there behind the scenes, and that's what I used on that detail grid. So if I wanted to scroll around, I have all the fields that are possibly displayed here. And even user-defined fields would show up as well. I could highlight a specific, say I want to filter by order number. It could be by card code or really anything else, doc status, whatever you want it to be. In fact, let's go after status. I could pick a range of statuses or just ask for a single value. And what I found is force the agility clause, where clause at the bottom. So now when I go to run this same query, it comes up with the filter. And the filter is going to be that status. So I can just say, give me all the ordered status. And I could have done it as a range if I wanted to grab all the O's and C's and so forth. So to clean this up a little bit, the caption could be order status instead of what I showed you there. You have the ability to change those prompts. So now we see order status, and maybe I just want to see everything with a C because I have it single selection. Again, I can show you, we can just select the customer service version. So now if you notice on this left side this is the SAP menu system. So when I'm in SAP, if I want to put this on an SAP menu, what I've done is I've created an agility submenu. You don't have to do this. I like to sort of group things. So, if I'm talking to somebody and I know it's off the agility menu, I know it's mine. Again, you can have agility, customer service, agility. I have one off of purchasing. You could have it off the business partner master, really anywhere. So all that you have to do is highlight this and move it over to where you want this on the menu. Now when I log into SAP, that's going to be on the menu. And if I have the cockpit activated, you can just drag this over to the common functions. So one of the advantages of these desktop grids is as soon as the software is installed, you could start using this. I think with our essentials, we're up to about 25 or 30 grids that you can just start using, or maybe copy one of our grids over to your own project and then maybe make some changes to it. But it's as simple as that to put it off of the SAP menus. These grids could be used for anything. Doesn't have to be WMS related. It could be for service calls. I have some things set up for accounting customer analysis. Another grid I wanted to show you is our calendars. So I have a grid here set up that goes through the production orders by calendar. So I simply just have a production order number and then the item number on it. You can specify some fields. You only have so much real estate here. But then what I did is I tied it to a detail grid. So when I look at it, I can start seeing all the resources. I'm not showing the bill of material in this case. I'm just showing the resources or the routing. So just like the other grids, when I highlight or focus on something, I could zoom into it, and then I have a hyperlink down here if I wanted to, link to that production order. So this is just another way to graphically represent things. Maybe I'm looking at a calendar that has new orders for the day, orders booked or orders shipped or open AR or, different things, really anything you can write a query over. So if we take a look at this edit is a little bit different, although I still have my SQL query. And here I'm just grabbing planned and released orders. I still have that detail link that I had on the other grid, so everything's the same there. If I had a filter, I would tie it to that. But here, this is a little bit different. I have a calendar definition that I'm linking it based on due date. So the date on the calendar, it shows up as the due date of the work order or the production order. And then in the cell of that calendar, I'm showing the document number, which is my production order number, and the item code. And then we could do some things with images and some other things down here that I'm not going to get into right here. So again, it's best to sort of segregate some of the functions you're working on. I like to segregate it by user, by groups of user, different departments. And really they could be anything, right? If I take a look at my analytic grid, that I use, maybe so here's one. I have a filter, show me all the pick lists that were generated over that date range. Here I'm showing number of orders on that pick list, number of items, number of bins. So if I look at the detail of that in my SQL statement, now here's those case statements where I'm using human readable statuses, but then I could start, tying it into the employee master to get the picker name. I have some subqueries built. So for that pick list, I want to see how many orders, what's the first order, how many items. So on these queries, you can start making them fairly complex with, subqueries and so forth. And on this one, I have some user-defined fields that show up on this. So you really do have a lot of power when you want to create these grids and manipulate things. Again, service calls. Here's an example of a grid that shows me all the service calls and all the technicians and the dates and so forth that they're identified, that they're on it. You can use this really for, a lot of other things with customer information and so forth. We also have process grids that I'm just going to talk about a little bit. But here's a sales order, I call it a batch management grid, that I have some of those alerts that I showed you before. But here we have some things to do processes on. So I have this set up that I could select specific orders and I could create pick lists, either a pick list, one pick list per order, or multiple orders on one pick list. So if I were to go into here and I have all these layouts, if I'm going to say take a look at all my UPS orders for the day, I could highlight that and go ahead and automatically create pick lists. So now this gets a little bit more complicated, but you wouldn't be creating process grids, unless you have a good idea. So now, remember I showed you earlier the hyperlink, right? Document number, pick list ID, the link to it. Now I'm going to go look at my ribbon bar at the top, and this is where I created the folder, and actually a folder for, I consolidate things in batches using the user-defined field, but then here's that generate pick list. And similar to before, you create a transaction report, and then in this case, I'm doing a lot of things, and this is not, this is definitely more advanced, but I just wanted to show you that the same tool that we use to create grids, we use to create process grids. So here I'm just getting the next pick list, I'm adding a pick list, and then I'm doing a SQL commit and moving on. So there's definitely different layers to our products, and they build off each other. It's not like a whole different design product. So that's what I wanted to cover in this this short webinar, is just to show you some of the capabilities of our grids and our tool set, and give you a little bit of taste of you can do a lot more with it. But this is definitely something, as soon as the software is installed, you can start taking advantage of it. Sort of like our Essentials, our WMS Essentials product. As soon as it's installed with setting a couple parameters, you can start doing transactions. I want to thank everybody for your time, and I'm going to send out the recorded video of this webinar here shortly, and I'm going to go ahead and include that list of all the SAP transaction object types. This comes into play not only for our product, but if you're doing anything on your own within Business One, this is a pretty valuable list here. So I'll send that out to everybody as well. All right, everybody have a great rest of your day, and thank you for participating in my webinar.